All right, well, it's exciting to be with you guys today, talk about something that's near and dear to me, the next generation and our desire to reach the next generation for Christ, to see more kids come to know Christ than ever before. This next generation makes up a fourth of the population of the country. Isn't that amazing? Before we do that, we're going to talk about a little fun thing we got coming up called the Easter Egg Drop. And let's see if I can get this going. There we go. The Easter Egg Drop. How many of you do an egg drop every year? At your house, you do an egg drop. Nobody does egg drops. All right, good. This should be well attended. Most communities are doing egg drops. Most of your families are doing egg hunts and all that kind of stuff. But we decided this year to do a big time egg hunt. We wanted to invite the community. We wanted to invite other families. We want to invite those that maybe they're not connected to a church. And what we decided to do was to rent a helicopter and drop 20,000 eggs from a helicopter. How awesome is that? And that is not original with us, although if it makes you feel better about me, it can be. But we decided to do this on April the 8th. That's the weekend before Easter. And you have a nifty little card. And the main things I would ask you to do, one, is to register. Two is to invite your friends. Invite as many people as you possibly can. Let your neighbors know. Maybe you've been working on a neighbor for a while, and they just, for whatever reason, they're struggling with coming to church. This is an awesome opportunity to invite them. We're dealing with a generation that's probably not just going to show up at church. They probably need something in between. All right? So the Easter egg drop, we also need volunteers. It's going to take 50 to 60 volunteers, and so we need you to volunteer. That would be awesome to do that day. We're hoping for 1,000 kids. We're hoping to get that many kids. How many of you know of these happening in the area? This isn't the first time you've heard of one. I know you said you've never done one. All right, so in our community, most people don't know about these. They're all over Cincinnati, but for us, in Amelia and Batavia and Anderson, in Eastgate, it's a new thing. So as you talk to people, they may be like, wow, I don't know about that. We have a ton of frequently asked questions at that website. You can always call me if you have a question not answered there. But we're pretty prepared for this. We just want you to know that today is kind of a major kickoff. So be excited. It is really, we're going to have a Cincinnati Circus there as well. They're going to do stuff with fire, and fire is awesome. And they're going to juggle stuff and all kinds of things. I know. It's going to be a quick event. They'll be done probably by about 10:40 or so. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and kids should walk away with a lot of eggs. 20,000 eggs that currently are in my garage right now. And so I can't park anywhere now in my garage. But that's okay. You're suffering for Jesus. I just wanted you to know that. How many of you are ready to feel old today? When we talk about the next generation, we want everybody to feel really good about themselves and be old. Even millennials, even those born between the ages of 17 and 34, to a Gen Zer, and that's what I'm talking about, is Generation Z, which has not a lot of studies, not a lot of books. It's hard to get some research on them. Basically, those born after 1996 to 2006, 2010, somewhere in there. That's what I'm talking about. So they're looking at millennials going, hey, you 25-year-olds are old. So we're going to talk a little about that today, and amazing how culture has changed. You can see this picture that most of us can remember when we were growing up and we saw cartoons, and some of you, the grandparents, you remember your kids watching cartoons where a floppy disk could end the world. Like the shredder has a floppy disk. If he puts it in the computer, it's going to destroy everything. These cartoons are the same. All of us used floppy disks. Some of you still have them. And you know that people are upcycling them and they're putting them together and charging $10 for a nice little retro pen holder. I just gave you some free of charge ideas at church today. All right, you can also make a little coaster out of those things. But no longer are they useful for technology. They're just nice little retro deals. America Online. So your parents and your grandparents probably told you they walked uphill both ways in the snow. They struggled to get to school. They had to churn their own butter. They had to kill their own food. They had to do all those things. Our stories, I don't know if you're like me and you've wondered, what will our stories be in the next generation? We're going to tell the next generation that we had to wait on the internet and the mail, all right? The America Online sent 93 discs a week to your house for some reason. They were just, there was an article, I didn't read it, that how much they spend sending all these crazy discs out. And so, children, we had to wait for the internet to arrive in the mail, and not an email, the snail mail. And you go out and you pick it up and you put it in your computer. Now, we would all agree, America Online, outdated, font choices here, not good. But that what was surprising to where we are in culture is that you couldn't even use this on an updated computer. You couldn't even put it in your computer because most laptops that are current, they consider CDs obsolete. They consider CDs obsolete. And more you're going to see this going away. So this whole thing kind of shows a picture of a bygone era, your childhood. So we'll go to the next one. We can talk about then, hey, you know what? They plugged in the internet. And you can remember a time when the internet was plugged in and you couldn't be on the phone at the same time as you were on the internet, and you would get in trouble, and it caused tension in the home because you would be wanting to make a phone call and you get that noise, and or it took forever to dial up in the internet. And this is, I think, more of an Ethernet. Then it went to high speed, and it was so exciting. We got high speed, but then we didn't have Wi-Fi. So they're a generation that they don't even remember high-speed internet. They don't even remember dial-up. They don't remember AOL being that way. You may have saw a post that AOL, Urban Outfitters, is selling a shirt for $45 just with the AOL logo. That's going to be the first time this generation has even really thought about AOL. What is probably more surprising, maybe you knew the tech, but you didn't know how many people died before this generation was even born. Princess Diana was a major death in our lifetime, right? We can remember the funeral. We can remember all that happened there. We remember the Elton John song. We can remember what just the country went through. Tupac, he died before they were born, except he's probably still alive in an island with Biggie. So he's probably not really dead, but that all happened before. But we know Tupac's still alive. All right, that's not just a hologram. That's Tupac and Biggie. Mother Teresa, she's no Mother Teresa, or the kids have no idea who Mother Teresa is these days, and no idea. What surprises most that have already seen this would say JonBenet Ramsey. I thought JonBenet Ramsey died like a couple of years ago. They still bring her name up. A 20-year case. In fact, you also could talk about the O.J. Simpson case as far as legal, was the year before these kids were born. So, and now it's coming back on as history and documentaries, and so these folks are now history, and they learn about them. They didn't experience them. They didn't experience 9/11 in the same way. Sort of the beginning of them, they would maybe have a little memory, but for the most part, if you remember 9/11, you're really not part of Generation Z. Some of you collected Beanie Babies. And the thing about a Beanie Baby is it wasn't a collection to play with, was it? It was an investment. It was your Roth IRA as a child. You said, I'm going to collect these Beanie Babies, and these are going to be worth money. I'm going to put them away in the basement. I'll buy all the unique ones. They'll sit there. They're going to gain money, interest, because I understand compound interest, and they're sitting there. They're compounding interest as they get moth-eaten. And I'm going to let these things go at some point, and I'll buy a car. I'll pay my retirement. I'll pay all the kids' school. And that's probably why we're in a student loan crisis. We invested in Beanie Babies. That's what happened. So we saw Beanie Babies as a major investment. And I remember as a kid, we did the same. In fact, Jennifer still has Beanie Babies. And when we were trying to make some money, she's like, you need to go through and see if any of these are worth money. And I was like, they're not going to be. But she's like, they're in really good shape. And I was like, yeah, but the world doesn't want these. They all have them already. They already have them in their basement. And they don't know what to do with them. For me, it was the Power Rangers. I remember as a kid, the Power Rangers, if you got the right Ranger in the box, it was going to be worth a lot of money. So, you know, somebody from my generation, you go into their home, it's got all these boxes, and so you watch those shows. So this is something that kids they're going to be like, hey, that's just a stuffed bear, but to you, that wasn't a stuffed bear, that was your financial portfolio, all right? That's a different way to look at it now. This is Clippy. Many of you may remember Clippy. This is how we knew that Apple had won. All right, this is how, when they introduced this, again, this is before the generation of today. They wouldn't know who Clippy is. It became something different after Microsoft got a lot of complaints. This is pictures of kind of a bygone era called Blockbuster. There was a time that we can remember where people thought that you would never give up the opportunity to walk through a video store. You probably remember that. Some of you probably thought that this culture won't give this up. It's too important to who we are. And we were like, yeah, we're going to give it up. We'll go and put money into a red box and have a DVD split out, and that's awesome. We'll do that. So Blockbuster went away, and all of that went away. That it's rare to find a video store. My hometown still has one, but they're an anomaly. They're in Sevier County. Tower Records. I remember in the early 2000s, there was still some Tower Records, and by the mid-2000s, those were pretty much gone. The idea that I would go somewhere to buy music, that I can't even choose the songs, because they don't want all the songs, they just want one song or two songs. They don't want, but we had to buy the whole album, right? And then we had to, music changed so fast, it was like, oh, I have this in cassette, and now I've got to put it on CD, and now I've got to put it in digitally. So all of these are gone, and this is Pets.com, those you haven't thought about in a long time. Pets.com kind of represents the major part of the tech bubble burst. And when the tech bubble burst, that affected this generation. They don't remember it. They don't know who the Pets.com thing is. We watched it yesterday at my house because I was the only one that remembered it, and watched all the little silly commercials and Super Bowl commercials. But this is all things that they could not adapt for whatever reason. They made choices, and they couldn't change, and they did try to change. It was just too late in the game. But this is a picture of culture where we are, and this is a picture we don't like typically. If I were doing a marriage conference, we'd throw that up there, and we'd throw off on it, and be like, oh, they're both on their cell phone, and they're having a nice dinner, and you can kind of write your own story. Maybe they met for the first time, maybe they're struggling, maybe they're just out on a date without kids for the first time in a while. But the reality is they're both connected to somebody else. They're both on their phones connected to someone else, and we don't like that. Typically, we may do that, but when we see it and we're confronted with it, we're like, man, I hate that about culture. I wish I didn't have a cell phone to where I would be so stuck to this and have to answer, which you don't have to. You don't legally have to answer the phone, just as a side note. But in our culture, it feels that way. So we see this. We need to understand there's going to be a lot about Generation Z that we don't like. There's a lot of positives. There's a lot to chew on, a lot to think through. This is probably going to be, for many of you, the first time to hear information like this. It is statistically proven. It's backed up. A lot of it's from James Emery White and some other folks that have studied it. I just want to encourage you just to think through about, don't just say, man, I hate that about this generation. I hate they never go outside and they just play all day on their computers. Don't just say that, but really think about, man, if that's how it is, how do we help them? How do we minister to them? And how do we care for them? This is a verse I wanted to start off with today, Deuteronomy 6:4-7. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. Those verses encourage us that it is up to us as moms and dads to disciple our kids. I'm and Jennifer are in charge of passing on our faith to our 3 kids. As we want to get to know them, we want to know their culture, we want to know their friends, we want to know a lot about them, really trying to reach them for Christ and help them grow spiritually. But also, it's not just about the family. The good news is you have a wonderful church here that does an event like this and does events like the Egg Drop. And our heart and our hope is that we reach the next generation, that there's about 5,000 or 6,000 kids really with an easy drive to this church that they're probably not really going to church anywhere, and that this is the time to reach them. And they're your grandkids, and they're your kids, and they're your friends' kids, and your nieces and your nephews. And we have a biblical responsibility to them to be able to pass on the faith, to talk to them in a way they understand, to not just shrug our shoulders and be like, they don't understand us, we don't understand them, but to think, how can I build a relationship? How can we go in and how can we care for these people who we love in many cases because they're our kids, they're our friends' kids, they're our baseball teams, they're our football teams, they're our soccer teams. We care about them, we care about their families. So Generation Z is recession marked. They don't remember a time in their lifetime that they haven't been in a recession. Now, that would sound silly to a lot of us because we'd be like, we're not in a recession right now. But as you can see, 72% believe we're still in a recession. That 3/4 of kids believe that they're still in recession. Many of them remember losing their jobs. Their parents lost their job. They lost their house. They didn't get toys for Christmas. That has marked them, I would say, probably for life, that they're going to have things about their thinking, things about their values because they're coming out of the recession that has marked them for their lifetime. And so these kids, they're great savers, which is awesome. but they save largely out of fear, which is not as awesome. They don't necessarily know how to manage it. They're just afraid that someday someone is going to come and take that money from them. So they are thinking about that. They've heard about the student loan crisis. That's going to be one of the top 4 or 5 events in their lifetime is the student loan crisis that's happening. But they went through a recession. They went through stories of war. They remember the ISIS on TV or on their digital streaming device. They remember all of those kind of things, and they heard them at a young age where they really didn't know how to process it. So 26% have a favorable view of socialism. That shouldn't surprise you because of the election. Most of you remember the arguments in the election, even if you didn't keep up with it a whole lot. You remember probably thinking, man, this is socialism. This is something that we are not about. How could kids be about this? And so kids are favorable towards socialism. That's a little scary for us. And that's something we've got to learn, that, hey, these kids went through recession, and that has led them to value socialism. And so as you're teaching and you're thinking, keep that in mind, that the kids, the majority of them, recession has marked them, kind of changed their thinking, and because of that, they have picked up a value of socialism. This is a term that I would encourage you to get to know, digital natives. It sounds like it's just a weirdo term, but this is what they use to describe this generation, because this is the first generation to ever have the internet from birth on. They've grown up totally in the internet. Now, people would say, well, what about millennials? The problem is we didn't get, Al Gore didn't invent the internet till like the 90s. And I know the crowd when I just get some people that get that. Most people are like, I don't understand that. But we didn't get the internet till the 90s, really. And it wasn't until about 98, 99 that it hit a point where almost every family had, if they didn't have access in their home, they had access through a library or through a school. So they grew up always having the internet. And then it, like we talked about at the very beginning of the message, it went from AOL quickly through some of those things. And every few years you saw an upgrade till we got to where we are today, where it's everywhere, where your toaster hooks into the internet, all right? To where your scales you weigh yourself on, Wi-Fi, will tell a computer how much you weighed, all right, and how much you drank that day. It's amazing. So that's where we are, and we went really fast. But they're the first one. So in being the first, we don't know how that's going to affect them in the long term. We don't know because they're the guinea pig generation with the internet. We don't know all the screen time. There's a lot of tests done on that, but just the ability and the accessibility, overwhelming accessibility to the internet and how that's going to change them. But we will say this, 79% display signs of emotional distress when away from electronic device. That seems maybe even a little bit low. When I was a student pastor, I would have parents pull their kids out of my event if I didn't allow the cell phone, if I didn't allow something. And that was in, the last 10 years or so. Because parents were like, it stressed parents out if they couldn't get a hold of their kids. And they said, you got to have the cell phone, got to have a way to get a hold of them. And again, kids begin to also, it's kind of a circular effect. Kids then begin to say, I can't live without this. And so they're connected to the internet all the time. And when they're not, a little panic goes through. In fact, it's amazing. I don't have as much to say about this as I kind of cut some of this. This generation is anxiety riddled. A lot of them are taking high anxiety, and a lot of it has to do with when they can't get to their internet or when they've dealt with some things that we talked about earlier with recession. It's really been a tough time growing up here. They're Wi-Fi enabled, and this is one of the most important parts of being digital natives, is 72% have a Wi-Fi enabled device in their sleeping environment. Now, I asked a group of several hundred public school kids, do your parents know that you stay up too late? No. Do they know that you're on the internet? No. And every adult looked up. And it was like I hit something when I blabbered about a lot of different things, but that made a difference in the adults in there. And then when I began to look into it, it is not just a school issue, or this particular school, it is a nationwide issue. And it is changing sleeping, that kids aren't getting enough sleep. It's changing that they are usually on a device that doesn't have a filter system, or a filter system they've already figured out how to get around. And that they can watch all the movies on Netflix. They can watch all the movies on Amazon Prime and on Hulu. They figured out how to get to the YouTube part that doesn't have the block, some of these elementary age kids. So they have these, and because of that, the average age of person looks at pornography as 11 years old and trending downward. that it's going to get younger and younger kids are going to be looking at pornography. Pornography is called the wallpaper of their lives. So it's not uncommon. I was at the gym the other day, and a high school boy was, we were talking about cell phones, and he said, I use Safari for one thing. Safari is the browser on an iPhone. I knew what he was talking about, but then he went on to say, I use it to look at pornography. Never had met this kid before. He was so willing, accepting, common to talk to me, someone he didn't know I was a pastor, about his viewing pornography. That's totally different than when we were kids, right? High schoolers not looking at it that way. All his buddies around him talking about porn. That is different. And this is going to have, I think we can get a pretty good idea, major ramifications in how they relate to each other and how the transgender issues and all of that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Sexual issues. They are getting off of Facebook. 25% of them left Facebook, 13 to 18 years of age, in 2016. Facebook is not where they want to be. That's where the old people are. They really don't have a use for Facebook. So they have this Snapchat, and they love Snapchat because it's anonymous. And they believe they could send anything on Snapchat to a friend, and it's deleted and gone. Now, that's not true, and I don't have time to go into a lot of what's not today. But they believe that anonymity, they can use these apps for anonymity. And so a rise in sexting. A rise in sexting at a younger age. Sexting being expected now when you're in a relationship. People breaking up because they won't sext. We've had youth groups before where someone would ask, hey, can you send me a nude picture? And they would actually entertain. I was like, you can say no. You can say no. But it's more they feel pressured to do that. That's kind of where kids are with the internet, that we see more and more of them going down places that you wouldn't want a kid to go. It's not just streaming Disney Junior. It's not just streaming Nick Jr. and the cartoons. It is them at night, sometimes on an Xbox with somebody in their ear that you don't know, talking about a video game. And so it could be really dangerous. Let's see if I can get it to go. There we go. Snack media, that sounds delicious. Snack media. The kids look at 7.5 to 9 hours of something a day. They look at it in short, quick videos like YouTube, Vimeo, those kind of things. So they love those little videos that pop up on Facebook. They like those little things. So they're constantly consuming information. Big time multitaskers. And all that's led to this picture of this goldfish. Now, in the early 2000s, a child's attention span was about 12 and a half seconds. Today it's about 8.25 seconds. It's pretty amazing to go that far down with an attention span. This goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. So if I bought a goldfish for my daughter Mercedes, it has a better chance of listening to me longer than she does. All right? It's going to have a longer attention span than my daughter right now. That's pretty sad that I could get a goldfish to do things that she won't do. They are big-time multitaskers. They're snacking the media. Again, average kids probably looking at 53 hours to 60 hours a week of media consumption, less on the TV end. It used to be, probably most of us, we grew up, we liked watching TV. And for them, that's probably more the back end. They're on games, on apps, surfing the internet for whatever reason. And so it's a little bit different, but they were doing it in shorter spurts. They don't want to sit down and watch a 3-hour documentary. Language has changed radically. In 2015, the word of the year was the emoticon that cries tears of joy. So as you look at this was the verse we started out with. I don't think I could translate this verse. This looks like it's from an alien, I think. But these kids could translate it easy. And some of you, because you've been around them, could translate this easy. This is from the Bible emoji verse. And so what's amazing is if you put this in front of your kids, I bet they would read this and read it more passionately than they would if it was words. I'm not saying, again, that's a good thing. I'm saying that's where kids are. And that's where we are sometimes. We're the ones that text and we use memes and we use videos and we use all kinds of things to communicate, and we use less and less of the verbal stuff. So this is where it is in visual language. Disappearing childhood's been around for about 30 years. But it's this idea that we have a time in our lives that we call childhood. And we believe when in childhood that a kid shouldn't have to deal with sexual knowledge. A kid shouldn't have to deal with violent knowledge. They shouldn't have to deal with murder. They shouldn't have to understand that the world is not fair, that the world is bad. We protect them from that. They shouldn't have the transgender issues and some of those kind of things. We want to protect that. And what's happening is that is fading away to where now people are pushing their kids. I want them to learn more. I want them to be more advanced. In athletics, for an example, I want them to be the expert, the all-star. In academics, as well as just saying, hey, we're going to watch this on TV, and if you understand it, well, that's fine. But we're not going to change it, and we're not going to create an environment for you to keep that innocence going. Where it used to be, we protected that innocence. We longed for that innocence. We wanted it to last as long as it possible. Some of you today do, but culture as a whole does not value that. In fact, sometimes they'll shame you that your kid is behind socially, is behind in some areas, and it is really more you have protected them from themes in TV shows, from things on the computer, because you value childhood, because you know when it's gone, and it's not coming back. So that's disappearing childhood. It used to be helicopter parenting that we were concerned about. And helicopter parenting, everybody kind of knows about. That's your parents hovering over you. And as those kids grew up and they went to college, and those parents became lawnmower parents. Anybody heard of lawnmower parenting? Okay. Lawnmower parenting is in what colleges had to deal with. And it means that basically they pushed everybody around through the college. And it said, kids, I can't talk to my professor. I think he's going to fail me. The mama's going to go talk to him. I can't get my class. Then daddy's going to go talk and make it happen. We're going to stay around an extra week just to make sure things are good. The idea that we can't give up, we can't let you go. One, you're not ready to handle it. And two, we're not ready to handle it. So those kids grew up and was like, we do not like that. That was not a favorite of ours, and we're going to swing the pendulum of parental knowledge to free-range parenting. Free-range parenting, that term came out of a mom in New York City who gave her 9-year-old a map of the subway system, $20, a roll of quarters, and said, see you later. And sent him on, and if you've ever been in the New York subway system, it's super complicated. Would not give him a cell phone because felt like that was being too much of a helicopter. That she didn't want him to have any access. He could go to a payphone, wherever those are, and call in. And so news got it, and it got labeled free-range parenting, and then more people started to say, yeah, we do this too. We are free-range parenters. And it really, and you may go, that is completely nuts, but for the most part, culture is very much underprotected. There are people that would argue you should not pass on your faith. You should not pass on your values. Your child should come on their own to a point. We would say these are not little adults. These are kids, and they need adults. They need protection. They need investment. But underprotected parenting also could be that, hey, every kid's got their own device, and we're just all kind of hanging out. The iPads are raising one, the Roku's raising another one, and the iPod is raising another one, kind of all going on. That's kind of underprotective as well. So some parents are now more and more underprotected. If I'm going to err as a parent, the thought is I'm not going to err by being overprotective. That's how many of us were raised. If we messed up, it's because we tried too much. They want to err toward being underprotective. If I'm going to lose, then I want it to be because they chose, not because of me. And so that's where parenting is today. These kids want to be world changers. 40% of millennials want to be world changers. 60% of Generation Z does. They want to be about equality. They want to be about human rights, digging wells and doing some mission work. They're not Christians by the most part, so it's not missionary thoughts necessarily, but it is human rights work. So they're about reaching others, and that is wonderful. And our hope is that we can lead them in that and help them do some of those things. This is the first post-Christian generation. This is the first post-Christian generation. What I mean by that is it used to be if I had a group of y'all in here and different, you invited people, lost people, and we gave an invitation, like a bunch of people would get saved. Because they knew coming in the stories of Adam and Eve, they knew the stories of Jacob, and they went to VBS as a kid, they went to Bible studies, and so even though they weren't believers and they weren't attenders at a church, they had a basis for all of that. And so all you had to do really is come in and deliver, the gospel, and it connected the dots. It's not that way. So if on a scale of 1 to 10, these folks would be like an 8 the past generations. Now we're at about like a 2. and it's a biblically illiterate generation, no spiritual worldview. We've got to rethink evangelism. Just got a few things to run through. We'll be done. Rethink evangelism. In Acts 2, very famous, Peter is called Pentecost, and 3,000 people get saved. Now, when they heard this, they were cut to their heart and said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, "Brother, what shall we do?" And Peter said to them, "Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit." So people get saved. Every day after that, people are getting saved. But that was a crowd that understood the Old Testament. They were deeply religious people. They knew a lot of things. There was dots, and Peter just helped connect the dots, and the Holy Spirit worked, and a lot of people got saved. What we're talking about is there are no dots to connect. We've got to put the dots there. And that's a little more like an Acts 17 generation, where Paul goes into Athens, and he's teaching. And they say to him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you're presenting, for you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean." Now, all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. He goes through, he does his best, and some people accept Christ, some people follow Christ, a lot of people don't, a lot of people mock it. And so what I would tell you is that we're more in that stage. We've got to think through evangelism and how we can reach kids differently than before, knowing that many of them do not know the Bible, that we give them a hard copy of the Bible. Some of them, it's the first Bible they've seen. It's like we're in a different country in that way, because normally if they've seen the Bible, it's on the computer. So this is a different rethink apologetics. They're willing to accept all the evidence in the world, case for Christ, evidence of man's verdict. But what about God that they don't like, the Old Testament God, and they see the wars in the world and disease in the world? What kind of God does that? So instead of defending through evidence, we have to defend the character of God. We have to defend the character of the church to them and help them see that church is a wonderful thing for the community. Church is a wonderful thing to be a part of, because they see it in a negative light. That is apologetics. That is defending the faith. Rethinking parenting. Let kids be kids. Again, protect childhood. Teach them to lose. I think we still have not gotten to the point where we can help teach a kid to fail, because that is the idea. When they hit 2021, how do you follow God? How do you take those risks, that steps of faith, if you don't even know how to fail, if you're afraid of that? Manage their digital print at a younger and younger age. These kids are going to have an internet print that's going to stay with them for life. You've got to begin to think, how do I help them paint themselves in a positive picture? We see all the time football players lose a scholarship because something they said on Twitter 2 or 3 years ago. A picture or a video rises up and they lose a job opportunity. So help them manage the digital print. And I think it's so important developmentally to make memories with the family, that when they look back on their time with you, they remember that. Kids want flashy, shiny toys. That's what this generation values. And we want to say, you know what? We're going to value going and doing cool stuff together as a family. We're going to go value and make memories. And this is a big bucket of heavy marbles. And in there are 936 marbles. And that represents 936 weeks that you have with a child from birth until the time they graduate high school. It's about 6,500 to 77,000 days. I could reach in here, and if it was your child, I'd probably be taking a lot of marbles out. It's really sad, isn't it? And it would probably get it down to about that. And you go, wow, what time do we have left? What time do we have left with our kids? Each one of these marbles represents a week of influence, a week of prayer, a week of caring and loving and putting memories in their lives, a week of helping them overcome, a week of strategy. And when it's empty, it's gone, and it's not coming back. And so if we want to make a difference in the lives of our kids, it starts with our kids. It's also in the community as well. What can we do in these moments that can have impact as parents, as grandparents, as leaders, to when we look at an empty one of these, we go, man, we invested that. We read to them. We loved them. We cared them. We taught them grace. We did amazing things for them. And we did that really for the glory of God. Let me pray, and we'll get started. Well, I just thank you so much for today. And God, I pray for these parents in here. I know this is a lot to take in. I know this is not just happy stuff. Some of it may be, but Lord, I know that we all struggle as parents, and that none of us are perfect in this room. And Lord, we fight battles, and we got into this without much of us training. Well, I just pray you put it on our heart, God, to develop strategies to care for these kids, to love these kids. And for all of us, give us a passion to reach the next generation for Christ. Lord, if we lose this generation, we've lost a fourth of the population. If we lose this generation, it would be very difficult for Connect to go on long. And honestly, we wouldn't be glorifying you. We wouldn't be doing what we should be doing. God, help us as we evaluate and think through every day of our lessons, of our prayers, of our time as families, our time at Connect, God, to invest these 936 weeks in the way that honors you. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen. Really encourage you today, maybe that you want to go and talk to somebody. We have a care team over here, would love to talk to you. Maybe something I said really hit home and you want to talk about how can I develop some better issues with parenting. Maybe you're struggling with your kids and their electronic device. We'd love to talk to you about that. Maybe you're struggling with a spiritual issue or your child is and you want to talk about that. That would be great. The last thing that I have, if I can get it to come up, is reaching the next generation is a strategic relational investment. Everybody wants the heart of the next generation. It's going to be 40% of the consumers. So you know that Disney wants it, Nickelodeon wants it, MTV wants it, ESPN wants it, Walmart wants it. If they don't get it, they're going to be going the way of Blockbuster and all those other things. The church wants it, not because of financial gain, but because we know that that is what we need to do, that we need to be passing on our faith. And as much as those places are rearranging their strategies to do it, let's rearrange ours. Let's be passionate and let's go after the next generation.